It's strange how silence can be louder than screams. That night, the house was too quiet. No TV, no laughter, no sound of her humming in the kitchen. Just the ticking of the clock, steady, merciless. I sat in the dark, staring at the glow of my phone screen. One message, one photo. That's all it took to burn 8 years of marriage to the ground. They were at the lake house, the one I built with my bare hands. Her hair tangled in his fingers, his hand on her waist like it had always belonged there. My best friend, my brother in everything but blood. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just stared at that photo until the screen dimmed, until my reflection stared back, empty, cold. It was 2:47 a.m. when I realized what I had to do. Not in rage, not in heartbreak, but in clarity. Pure, surgical clarity. They thought they had buried their secret deep. They thought I was blind, but I had seen enough. And now I would make them see too, every lie, every touch, every whispered word they thought was safe. The silence that night was the sound of something breaking. Not my heart, my mercy. When I met Emily, I thought I had finally outrun loneliness. She was warmth in human form, soft voice, sharp mind, eyes that made you forget how cold the world could be. We met in college. She was an art major. I was studying architecture. She loved color. I loved structure. Maybe that's what drew us together, her chaos, my order. In the early days, everything felt easy. Morning coffees that turned into whole-day conversations. Late-night drives with the windows down and her hand resting on my arm. We built something that felt solid, something real. When we married, it was small. Just family, a few friends, and Mark, my best man. Mark and I had known each other since childhood. He was the kind of friend who showed up before you asked. The kind who knew every chapter of my life, even the ones I didn't talk about. Emily loved him too, or so I thought. They laughed together easily, but I never saw anything wrong in that. I trusted them both more than I trusted myself. We bought a modest house just outside the city. White siding, tall oak in the yard, wind chimes by the porch. It wasn't much, but it was ours. She filled it with paintings. I filled it with plans for the future. Our life fell into a rhythm. I'd wake before her, make coffee, and leave notes on the counter, little reminders that I loved her. She'd text me photos of her day, her sketches, our dog sleeping on the couch. Every evening, I'd come home to dinner, candles, and her tired smile that still managed to melt me. For years, it was peace. No storms, no fights worth remembering. Just two people building a quiet life. But peace is a way of dulling your senses. You start missing the tiny cracks, the forgotten details, the moments when something feels off, but you brush it aside because love blinds you in the softest way. Looking back, the signs were there. Her phone always face down. The sudden girls' weekends that started once every few months, then became more frequent. The faint smell of cologne I didn't own clinging to her scarf. Once I woke in the middle of the night and found her standing by the window, phone in hand, smiling. She said she couldn't sleep. I believed her. I remember her laughter when she'd get a text. How she turned slightly away from me as she typed back. Little things that didn't feel like betrayal at the time, just human moments. Mark was around often. Sunday barbecues, game nights, football. He was family. He knew where the spare key was. He'd help fix things when I worked late. He'd stay for dinner, share stories, make her laugh. And I'd smile, grateful for how close we all were. It's almost pathetic how blind trust can look like love. How easily it disguises betrayal as friendship. I remember our anniversary trip, the lake house. The one I designed, built with Mark's help. Wood, glass, stone, everything meant to last forever. We spent weekends there, away from noise. It was supposed to be our sanctuary. Now, it's a graveyard of memories. That house held the best of us, and, as I would later learn, the worst. Sometimes she'd stare at the water for hours, lost in thought. I thought she was dreaming about our future. Turns out, she was remembering her lies. Still, in those years, I was happy. Genuinely. I believed I had married the love of my life, and my best friend was my brother in arms. It was a simple, quiet kind of happiness. The kind you don't realize is built on rot until it collapses. And when it did, it wasn't sudden. It was slow, silent, like a crack spreading through glass. Invisible at first, unstoppable in the end. It began with something small. A scent. One night, she came home late, said she was out with coworkers. She hugged me, and I caught it. Cologne. Not mine. Not any I recognized. I asked quietly, "New perfume?" She smiled. Too quickly. "Yeah. Sample from a store." That smile stayed on her face too long. The lie sat between us. Invisible, but heavy. After that night, I started noticing things. Subtle changes. Her phone never left her side. Face down on the table. Locked tighter than a vault. Once I heard her laugh in the other room. Soft, low, private. When I walked in, she froze. The smile vanished. She said she was watching a funny video, but the screen was dark. Another time, her girls' trip, photos showed her reflection in a mirror. A man's arm in the background. No one she mentioned. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed truth. Real proof. So I started watching. Quietly. Like an architect checking for cracks before the collapse. I checked the phone bill. New number, repeated calls, odd hours. Always between 10 p.m. and midnight. Always when she said she was working late. I copied the number. Called from my office line. A man answered. His voice was familiar. He said, "Hey, Em." Then silence. I hung up. My pulse stopped. "Mark." It was Mark's voice. For a long time, I just sat there, listening to the hum of the office lights. Try to convince myself I was wrong. Maybe he dialed by mistake. Maybe there was an explanation. But deep down, I already knew. I remembered all the small moments I'd ignored. The shared glances. The inside jokes. The late-night work texts that made her smile. The nights he stayed over after drinking, sleeping on the couch, or so I believed. I started checking everything. Receipts in her purse. Bank statements. Credit card charges. One charge stood out. A lakeside cabin rental. 2 nights. The same weekend, she told me she was visiting her mother. Her mother, who had been in the hospital at the time. That's when the numbness turned to calculation. I stopped being the husband who trusted. I became the man who watched. I set up a small camera in my car. Left it parked outside the house when I went out of town for work. I didn't tell her. I wanted to see what happened when she thought I was gone. 3 days later, I checked the footage. There it was, her car pulling up. And behind her, Mark's truck. They went inside together. Lights off. Curtains drawn. 2 hours later, he left. She didn't even look out to see if anyone watched. I replayed it over and over until I felt nothing. No anger. No tears. Just the hollow rhythm of betrayal settling in. Still, I needed undeniable proof. Something they couldn't twist or deny. So I installed a camera at the lake house. The one place I knew they'd feel safe. Weeks passed. I said nothing. Pretended everything was fine. We laughed, ate dinner, slept side by side. She told me she loved me, and I smiled back. Then one Saturday, she said she was heading to a friend's retreat. Her bag already packed. I kissed her cheek and watched her drive away. That evening, I logged into the lake house camera. The feed came alive, flickering at first, then clear. There they were. Her, him, on the couch. My couch. I sat in silence, watching every second. Their laughter, their whispers, her smile, the one I thought was mine alone. At one point, she walked to the window, looked out toward the lake, the same view where she once told me, "I'll never lie to you." Now she stood there, wrapped in another man's arms in the house I built for her. That's when I stopped watching. I had enough. The truth was no longer questioned. It was evidence. They thought they were hidden. They thought I'd never know. But I had everything. And soon, everyone else would too. The night I chose to confront her, the rain wouldn't stop. It was fitting, a storm outside, another inside me. She came home late again. Hair wet, eyes tired. "Traffic," she said, setting her purse on the counter. Her voice sounded normal. Too normal. I watched her quietly. Every lie looked smaller when you already knew the truth. I asked, "You still love me, right?" She froze, just for a second, then smiled. "Of course I do. Why would you ask that?" I nodded. No reason. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't move. I just looked at her, the woman I thought I'd grow old with, standing in front of me like a stranger wearing her skin. We ate dinner. Talked about nothing. She laughed once, and I almost laughed too, out of habit, not feeling. It's strange how muscle memory can make you act human when your heart has already died. After dinner, I showed her my phone. Open the video. Press play. At first, she didn't understand what she was seeing. Then her face drained of color. Her fork clattered to the plate, and silence filled the room. Her voice broke. Where did you get this? The lake house, I said quietly. The one I built. The one you turned into a stage for lies. She started crying. Tears. Trembling hands. The usual performance. She reached for me, but I stepped back. Please, she said. It's not what you think. I almost laughed. Not what I think. She was in my house with my best friend, on my couch, saying my name between his breaths. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't hit her. I just stood there, looking at the person who had murdered every version of me that ever believed in love. She said it was a mistake. She said it happened only once. Then twice. Then, finally, she broke, said it had been going on for years. Each confession was a nail. Each word, a hammer. I asked why him. Her answer was small. I don't know. But she did. They always do. I remember staring at her and realizing how calm I felt. Not because I forgave her, but because I had already moved past the pain. There was nothing left to break. She begged me not to tell anyone. Said it would ruin her life. Said it would destroy Mark's marriage, his reputation, his kids. And that's when I understood something important. They weren't afraid of losing me. They were afraid of being seen for what they truly were. I told her I needed time to think. She nodded, hopeful, thinking maybe I'd forgive her. But I wasn't planning reconciliation. I was planning revelation. That night, she slept in the guest room. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain hit the glass. Each drop felt like a countdown. By morning, I knew exactly what I had to do. Not out of vengeance, out of justice. I had spent years building trust, building love, building a home. Now I would rebuild, not for her, not for him, but for me. Brick by brick, truth by truth. The storm had ended by dawn. The air was clean, and for the first time in years, so was my heart. They thought the worst had already happened, that the truth was the end. But they were wrong. The truth was just the beginning. Once I decided, everything narrowed. A single purpose. No drama. No impulsive acts. Only precision. First, I protected myself. I hired a lawyer. Not for threats. For structure. For paper. He read contracts like a surgeon reads charts. He told me what evidence would hold up, what would not. He told me how to freeze assets, how to place legal pressure where it would hurt without breaking the law. Everything had to be clean, indisputable. Next, I organized the proof. Files, dates, times, screenshots, video, receipts. I labeled each item. Chronological order. Context notes. I backed them up in 3 places. Encrypted. Offline copies in a locked safe. I left nothing to memory. Memory lies. Then I attacked their cover. I started with bank statements. Small transfers. Late-night dinners. Gas for 2 cars at the same station. Shared expenses disguised as work. I traced patterns. I connected dots. Where money moved, motivation followed. I arranged meetings that looked accidental. A neighborhood barbecue. A charity gala. Places where reputation mattered. I smiled. I shook hands. I recorded. Not with a hidden camera this time. With witnesses. Names. Conversations. Dates. Public proof. I sent a single, simple letter. Not to them. To Mark's employer. Not rude. Not emotional. Factual. It listed dates. It attached evidence. It asked plain questions a company could not ignore. I knew the weight of a name on a paper. I used it. I used social proof too. Old friends. People who had seen the 3 of us as one. I reminded them of things. Small memories framed as questions. Remember the lake house weekend in May? Their answers would become the chorus that confirmed my story. At home, I began to reclaim control of the narrative. I moved accounts. Joint went to separate. Cards reassigned. Titles reviewed. I documented everything. A paper trail that would outlast any spoken denial. But I also designed humiliation with care. Not violence. Not threats. Exposure. Consequences. Humiliation that fit the crime. Clean. Surgical. Final. I arranged a public reveal. Not petty. Not sensational. Strategic. A gallery opening. A small art event Emily loved. An evening with friends, neighbors, old colleagues. She would be there. Mark would be there. Comfortable, confident, untouchable. Weeks before the event, I placed the evidence where it would hurt most. A printed envelope, labeled and sealed, delivered to the gallery director. A polite phone call to a local journalist I knew from years ago. Not a tabloid. A steady voice with standards. A secured copy of the lake house footage. A copy of the bank transfers. A timeline. A clear, clean statement of facts. I did not beg. I offered truth. I also prepared for their defenses. I anticipated lies. The plausible misinterpretations. The gaslighting lines I had once believed. For each lie, I had counter-evidence. For each doubt, a document. For each denial, a witness. Meanwhile, I worked on Mark's weak points. A business partner who valued reputation above all. A mortgage under his name. A promotion looming. I fed the right information to the right people. Not gossip. Facts. Paper trails. Footprints. On the financial front, I froze certain joint assets temporarily through a lawyer's notice. Not vindictive. Protective. It would force questions. It would force audits. People with money get nervous when audits appear. They ask questions. They look closer. That's when cracks show. I kept my face neutral through it all. At dinner, I laughed. At game nights, I cheered. Inside, I was a machine. Patient. Efficient. Waiting for the sequence to align. There were nights I almost slipped. I wanted to call him. To confront him in the street. To throw the video at him and watch his face. Each time I stopped. Because impulsive theater gives them an escape. Calculated action traps them. I told one person. My lawyer. My oldest friend. The one who would be a witness in court if required. He never asked for details. He only nodded. He knew what it meant to cross lines. The last phase required timing. Everything hinged on a single evening. The gallery event. The city's art crowd. Faces that mattered. Voices that traced back to jobs, schools, children's teams. Reputation was currency. I would withdraw their credit. On the day, I dressed like a man who had nothing to hide. I sat in the back of the gallery. Calm. Observant. Detached. Emily smiled under the lights. Mark told jokes. People admired her latest piece. They clinked glasses. They felt safe. Invincible. At 7:45, the director excused himself. He walked over to me with the envelope. He read. His face changed the way mine did the first night I saw the photo. He asked for a private word with Emily. He did not shout. He did not make a scene. He simply said, "We need to talk." And then he did what I had counted on. He opened the door. I did not want applause. I wanted the truth to be impossible to deny. The moment was near. The house of cards teetered. Outside, rain began to fall. Inside, the air felt thin. Everything that had been quiet for years was about to be loud. I watched them as the first whisper spread. Their eyes met mine. For a second, I saw fear in both. Not because of me, because the world might finally see them for what they were. I sat back, calm as stone, ready to watch the rest unfold.